Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Lachlan Harris. I'm a Manager of Policy in the New South Wales EPA's Circular Economy Policy Branch. As has been mentioned, today I'm going to talk to you about the work we've been doing to develop the New South Wales Waste Infrastructure Plan. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting here, the Gumbaynggirr people. I extend my respects to Gumbaynggirr elders past and present, and extend my respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today or joining online. Aboriginal people have cared for country in a sustainable way for more than 65,000 years. Their knowledge and science have much to offer as we work to address the environmental challenges of our time, and we're deeply committed to embedding Aboriginal perspectives in our decision making at the EPA. So again, as I've mentioned, I'm here to talk about the work we've been doing to develop a waste infrastructure plan. As you've heard today from our CEO, Tony Chappell, we're rapidly running out of landfill capacity in New South Wales. On current projections, Greater Sydney could be out of landfill space by 2030, with some other regions not far behind. But as Tony has alluded to this morning, this presents us with a really great opportunity to harness this issue to accelerate the shift to a circular economy. It's a really complex issue, and the work that we do to support this transition is guided by the way that we make sense of these really complex environmental issues. You might have heard a sailor talk about a whole-of-system thinking approach, which is critical to the work that we do, and it's the way that we can most effectively push the transition to a safe circular economy forward. In simple terms, this means that we make sense of issues by analysing waste and recycling as one point in a broader supply chain, from product design and manufacturing through to disposal and recycling, identifying root causes to problems and understanding the connections between different issues. By taking this approach, we recognise that the issues standing in the way of circularity are complex, and no one solution will provide us with all of the answers. Instead, we need to look across the whole life cycle of products and materials to identify effective opportunities for intervention, from upstream prevention that influences how products are designed or used, to downstream intervention to ensure that they are safely disposed of or recycled. In the context of New South Wales' circular economy, this approach has led us to identify several key priority areas and issues, some of which you'll hear from more from my EPA colleagues throughout the 3-day program here. Obviously, a critical part of this life cycle is ensuring infrastructure is in place to maximise our recovery and circularity efforts, but also to ensure that there are safe options for disposal for material that cannot be recovered. As a first phase of our infrastructure plan work, we've developed a better understanding of this critical part of our waste infrastructure system. By understanding the capacity of residual waste management and the barriers to investment in new infrastructure, we're hopeful that we can design solutions to ensure that waste that can't be avoided or recycled is safely disposed of. So I just want to take a minute to outline some of the context and background to this issue. As many of you in this room are aware, in 2021, the previous New South Wales government released the Waste and Sustainable Materials Strategy, which set the strategic direction for New South Wales's transition to a circular economy. Alongside this, the previous government also published a guide to future infrastructure needs, which articulated the infrastructure needed to manage the state's waste out to 2040. This guide was informed by modelling undertaken to understand current and projected waste generation, current and planned capacity, and the infrastructure gaps that need to be filled over the coming 20 years. This information about infrastructure needs was published on the assumption that if gaps were articulated, there would be a response to fill those gaps. And to date, what we're seeing is that this has not occurred, and it's not occurred at a speed that we need to make sure that we're hitting our recovery targets. So in early 2024, we set out to try and understand why this was the case. We'd begun to hear concerns from local councils about difficulty achieving value for money and possible capacity and competition constraints within the waste market. We'd also heard from industry that complex planning processes and uncertain planning outcomes were presenting high investment risks, as was the difficulty in securing land and achieving social licence to operate. We wanted to test and validate these concerns and then develop a plan to address these issues in a comprehensive whole-of-government way. The waste infrastructure plan that we've developed will be more than just a re-articulation of infrastructure needs. As a first step, the EPA, in collaboration with Arcadis, has remodelled New South Wales's putrescible and non-putrescible residual waste infrastructure capacity to identify critical gaps in our ability to meet demand for waste management. In other words, where waste generation exceeds transfer and disposal capacity. In May 2024, the EPA convened a working group of industry and local government representatives, including some of you in attendance today, to test and validate the assumptions behind this modelling to ensure robustness of the result. So this analysis indicates that with no intervention, Greater Sydney will run out of ways to safely dispose of its residual waste from 2030. In 2022-23, Greater Sydney accounted for 54% of New South Wales's total residual waste generation, totalling 4.1 million tonnes. Over the next 20 years, the region's waste generation is expected to keep growing, mostly because of population growth and increased economic activity. This means that beyond 2030, there's a shortfall of approximately 1.1 million tonnes each year in putrescible landfill capacity, the landfills that service our households, which continues to grow in line with waste generation out to 2040 and beyond. This same analysis paints a similar story for non-putrescible landfills that service our construction and demolition activities. Without action, Greater Sydney's demand for these landfills will also exceed supply from roughly 2030, and by 2032 the shortfall will reach approximately 1.9 million tonnes per annum. Infrastructure like landfills and transfer stations is a key area of concern for us because without enough of it in the right place, much of the state's residual waste may have no safe pathway for disposal. Now, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the Greater Sydney focus of much of the work we've done to date. I know that there are a lot of you wondering how regional and remote New South Wales fits into this picture as well. Please be assured that we are also working and looking at how regional waste management is placed, and we've engaged Arcadis to help us better understand this as well. The first part of this work was completed last year, with findings tested and validated with local councils across New South Wales in an extensive effort to understand residual capacity constraints as well as broader waste management challenges for regional New South Wales. Addressing issues arising in the regions will form part of the next phase of our infrastructure plan work. So what are the consequences of doing nothing about this issue? If Sydney's landfills reach capacity, this means that any surplus waste that cannot be disposed using existing or planned facilities will likely need to be sent for processing and disposal in regional or interstate areas. With the need to transport waste longer distances for processing and disposal, the cost to households for landfilling waste could increase by an estimated 20%. The non-putrescible shortfall could result in increased costs for construction and demolition and delays to the delivery of critical infrastructure such as housing. These are large-scale economic effects, and we've been working really hard to understand how we can break down barriers to increasing our residual waste capacity to ensure that this isn't where we end up. In addition to our efforts engaging councils on our modelling work, we've also spoken with ROCs and JOs across the state, as well as 85 individual councils over the past roughly 12 months. These engagements have been wide-ranging, from waste levy-related issues to FOGO, and have also covered infrastructure needs. We've heard councils' views on the difficulties they face in engaging with the market, and that a lack of competition is hampering value for money and access to services. We've heard concerns around the need for more government direction and support, and we're conscious of these pressures and the constraints local councils face when undertaking service delivery. These views has helped us shape the plan, and I'd like to take a moment to thank those in the local government space who've engaged with us through this work. Noting concerns we have heard from parts of industry about investment uncertainty and risk, we've worked hard to better understand these issues as well. We engaged consulting firm Alvarez & Marsal to undertake targeted engagement with waste industry stakeholders, as well as stakeholders from firms providing financial backing to waste infrastructure assets to build an industry point of view on waste infrastructure investment risks. Through this work, over 25 in-depth interviews were conducted with key market participants to better understand how the industry plans for and undertakes its investment. We sought views on broad market challenges, investment considerations, and how government could best support investment decision-making into the future. Feedback through this process was fairly consistent. The main concerns we heard from the waste industry and their financial backers was that a lack of policy certainty regarding the preferred mix of waste management solutions, inconsistent site development processes and experiences, as well as difficulties gaining social licence to operate, were presenting too high of a financial risk and affecting investment appetite. Other concerns included a lack of consistency in the enforcement of regulations and a need for more collaboration between industry and government to ensure support meets industry needs. So we took what we'd heard through these engagements with local government and industry and developed a series of options aiming to address these problems. In January 2025, we held a workshop attended by stakeholders from local government, industry and finance with specific objectives to begin to share the work we had done to date to understand the scale of the capacity issue, validate and refine our understanding of the issues and challenges we'd heard from stakeholders, and for all stakeholders to develop a shared understanding of these issues. We also sought to seek and capture feedback and perspectives from stakeholders on potential options to address these issues and provide a forum for stakeholders to help co-design alternative solutions. We had over 45 participants attend the workshop from industry, local government, private equity firms and other government agencies who provided over 550 pieces of insight and feedback. Key outcomes of the workshop included developing a shared understanding of the scale of the issue, validation and refinement of issues facing the sector, and capturing feedback from stakeholders to build on proposed actions under the plan. A further outcome from this workshop was providing an opportunity to open up further dialogue with industry about future plans and ambitions, including landfill extensions. We've since done a little bit of additional modelling to understand what impact these might have on capacity. If improved, these extensions could address short-term capacity constraints for Greater Sydney, giving us further time to develop strategic planning frameworks for long-term waste infrastructure planning, for residual waste management, as well as ongoing circular economy development. And this will be the focus for us moving forward. So the release of the first chapter of the infrastructure plan is very soon, and this will be released for a period of public exhibition. I encourage you all to make a submission and let us know your thoughts when this occurs. As I flagged, the next phase of our work will focus on regional infrastructure needs and how we can better enable a circular economy in New South Wales. As I've touched on, we have begun that process with a regional residual waste needs assessment, but we are also interested in building a better picture of circular economy needs in the regions as well. We anticipate further engagement through the second half of 2025 on this issue, so please stay tuned for that. Our intention is to release the following chapters of the infrastructure plan later in 2025. And finally, I hope that you will all come away from this session with a better understanding of the deep engagement we've been undertaking to help us get this right, and that process will be ongoing. We take this part of our role very seriously, and it's been great to meaningfully engage with so many on this issue. So again, accept my thanks. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're all pretty excited to see what you come up with. Looks like you've covered all bases in the engagement. So, what you've got for us, we're all waiting for with bated breath, I can assure you. So, thank you, Lachlan. Okay, our second presenter today is Craig Barker, the COO of Resource Recovery for Veolia Australia and New Zealand. Craig's expertise lies in recovery, recycling and diverting waste from landfill, having worked for Suez and now Veolia to drive new resource recovery initiatives in municipal and commercial waste. This has involved delivering a range of infrastructure types, which is important. It's really important for stakeholders to hear from industry participants that are tasked with the challenge of delivering infrastructure. So Craig's infrastructure planning outlook will explain where the resource recovery sector is positioned and how it will change to meet the needs of a future circular economy. So please welcome Craig Barker.